Okay, so hello and welcome to Attentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to share our next-gen add-on solution, ChartGuard, with you today. My name is Chelsea Grover and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Attentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Attentive, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in next-gen healthcare, and our goal is to make delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their next-gen software investment. We're passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything next-gen. And we also have two add-on productivity solutions for next-gen, ChartGuard, which we'll be talking about today, and Refund Manager. Okay, so back to ChartGuard. At the end of the presentation, we're going to open the floor up to questions from you. We'll answer all the questions at the end, but you may type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Tom Seco is Attentive Business Development Manager, and Joe Schultz is Director of Product Solutions at Attentive, which means that he and his team are the people that actually built this great program. So Tom, I will go ahead and pass it off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
All right, thank you very much, Chelsea. I appreciate that. Thank you for everyone to attending our webinar today about ChartGuard and learning about the Downtime solution. Here's an agenda we put together for the webinar. During the presentation, you'll learn about what is ChartGuard. We'll talk about EHR dependencies, and you'll learn why practices buy ChartGuard. We'll talk about how it works, and we'll show you the output of ChartGuard. And then we'll give you a brief overview of who Attentive is, and like Chelsea said, we'll answer any questions that you have at the end of the session. So, what is ChartGuard? ChartGuard is a piece of software that contributes to your business continuity solution. It can be a component of your overall business continuity strategy. It ensures the availability of patient charts during EHR downtime. So, when providers lose access to NextGen, it enables them to still have access to the patient chart information. And each location that you have will now have preparedness for dealing with downtime situations with a product like ChartGuard implemented. ChartGuard also addresses a HIPAA clause in that it can act as a contingency plan for responding to emergencies or situations that occur when systems go down. In HIPAA, there's a clause that states that establish and implement as needed policies and procedures for responding to an emergency or other occurrence that damages systems that can contain electronic protected health information. So with a product like ChartGuard or some type of business continuity solution, you can use it as a contingency plan for addressing downtime situations that cause you to lose access to that information. We, as in the healthcare industry, have become very dependent on technology in our environments, not only in our industry, in our lives as well. The complexity of this technology has grown over the years. We have servers, we got workstations, we have tablets, we got scanners, we have local area networks, we have VPNs, we have T1 lines, we have wireless connections, wireless routers, we have internet connections, we have hosting providers, we have power systems, we have cooling systems. All of these components act not only in our healthcare environment, but also in our day-to-day lives. And with each one of these components, there's software behind each one of these components as well. So the complexity even goes deeper. When we lose access or we lose one of these components, it causes our systems to go down or have hiccups. And when we lose in the healthcare industry, when we lose access to our EHR systems, that means that it can impact the quality of care that we provide. We lose productivity, we can lose revenue, and as we are sitting in front of a patient or we're sitting in front of someone and we lose access to our systems, it can be an embarrassing situation as well. There have been studies out there that have been conducted with regards to trying to put a cost to what downtime means in the healthcare environment when we lose our EHR systems. And some studies have shown that we can lose as much as $488 per hour per provider. So it can be quite expensive when we lose our access to our EHR system. When we lose access to our EHR systems, what are our options? Well, our options are that we can close the practice, or we could close the location. We could go to paper charts, but that's becoming harder for us to do, as over the past 10 years, we've become more dependent on our EHR systems. So for us to maintain paper charts is becoming quite hard for us to do, and pretty much some organizations don't do it at all. We can implement fully redundant technologies, so we could add more servers, we could add more networks, more storage area networks, more data centers, more power systems, more cooling systems. When we start to do that, then we're adding more cost, and our cost of our investment continues to rise when we do that. We can even go to hosting systems, but when we host, we also have risk with that. When we try to, if we lose access to the internet, then we lose access to our hosting provider. So when we do lose access to our systems, it can be caused by various situations. Some situations can be caused by human error. Other situations can be caused by hackers, if you will. Other situations could be caused by technology failures. Here's an example of what some of those failures can be. If you look at that second bullet, sprinkler line failed. Well, we don't have sprinklers in our computer systems, but in this particular case, what happened was there was a sprinkler line outside of the computer room that failed, and water started to seep into the computer room. And because of that seepage, this particular organization had to shut down the server room, and then subsequently all of the remote locations lost access to their systems. You may recall a couple of years ago in July of 2015, United Airlines, New York Stock Exchange, the Wall Street Journal, Brookings Institute all had failures on the same day. United had lost network connectivity for a couple hours, and which caused them to ground hundreds of flights worldwide. The New York Stock Exchange had a faulty software upgrade, which caused them to stop trading for nearly 4 hours. The Wall Street Journal, in this particular case, had an unexpected demand in on their website, and they didn't have the capacity to handle that demand, so it caused failures of the server connections. The Brookings Institute was offline for an hour on that same day due to a content publishing error. So all of these organizations are built for uptime of 24/7, 365 days a year. And if these organizations with their robust infrastructures can come down for various reasons, that means anybody can come down. In May of 2016, Time Warner and Cox had customers in New York City, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island lose internet connections because of fiber cuts that were done by Level 3. So Level 3 is a contractor for cable and Cox, and they were doing some construction, cut the fiber lines in those states, and caused them to lose connection. In 2016, you may recall that there was a cyber attack on a company called DIN, and DIN, they attacked distributed denial of service and caused Amazon, Twitter, Pandora, Reddit, Pinterest, Athena, many organizations to have downtime situations caused by that. And then just a couple months ago, Comcast went down for 90 minutes, and many organizations across the country were affected, again because of Level 3 had a configuration error, so human error caused causes that as well. So the point of this slide is really to make us aware again of the types of failures that can occur, why they can occur, and that in these cases they're out of our, most of it's out of our control. And as I mentioned earlier, when we have of that study that was $488 an hour is what the cost would be per provider per hour. If you had a 10 provider practice and you were down for 4 hours, the cost could be $19,520. So it can be quite expensive when we have a downtime situation. So the questions that we need to ask ourselves, because of our dependencies on the technology in our healthcare environments, because of what we just reviewed, the various types of failures that can be caused by hackers and by human error and by technology error. The questions that we need to ask as we look into the preparedness of our downtime situations for our organizations, do I pursue uptime, or do I pursue a solution that enables me to continue on with my business until NextGen comes back online? Do I spend more money on redundant infrastructure and the cost of that in order to increase my uptime, or do I feel like I have enough invested in my infrastructure and I need a solution that will get me through the downtime situation until my IT staff gets NextGen back online? Another question is, am I going to be reactive or proactive to my clinic's preparedness for downtime? And am I going to wait for a downtime situation to occur and then react to it, or am I going to be proactive in the event that I'm going to have a downtime situation and have a solution in place? What are the types of impacts that I need when I have a NextGen? What are the types of impacts that a NextGen downtime incident will have on our clinic? Do we have a revenue impact, and what is that impact? Do we have a impact to patient satisfaction? Do we have an impact to provider performance? So what types of impacts do we have to our clinic when we have a downtime situation? And then follow that up with, what is the significance of that impact to our clinic when we have a downtime incident? How much revenue may we lose? How much patient satisfaction will decrease when we have that kind of a situation? How much of the performance of the providers is impacted when we lose access to our NextGen systems? And then the last question is, it really, I guess it's really not a question. It's are we going to lose the connectivity, or are we not going to lose the connectivity? As we just talked about with the various failures, the potential for losing connectivity is quite increased with all of the technology that we have and all the components that we have and all the software components that we have. So what are we really going to do to minimize the loss, and what are we going to really do to minimize the disruption when it does happen? So these are some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves as we go through deciding what type of solution we should have for preparing us for downtime situations. So one solution is ChartGuard. And as I mentioned earlier, ChartGuard is an option for preparing us for downtime situations and addressing our downtime situations. It is an affordable solution. It does allow the practice to continue to be productive, continue to be profitable and secure during an EHR downtime situation, so the providers and staff can continue to see their patients. And it does allow the providers to have access to the complete clinical record offline as PDF files. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Joel Scholes, and he's going to talk through how ChartGuard works.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. And as Tom said earlier, thank you everybody for attending today. We appreciate it. When we created ChartGuard about 5 years ago now, we had a couple goals with the initial clients we were working with to solve their downtime problems. One of them was that the information had to be available locally. Okay, so they had looked at cloud-based solutions and decided that, well, when their network's down, which happens to be the most common outage, when their network's down, they can't get to a cloud-based solution, okay? Because normally they're connected over a VPN, which is over the internet, and if that whole thing isn't working, they need their clinical data locally at each site, okay? So that was a big requirement, and that was a big differentiator between ChartGuard and some of the other solutions that people are doing out there, whether they're putting files up on, Dropbox or using someone else's cloud-based solution. Those things are great, provided you can get to the cloud. But again, early on, what we were seeing talking to our initial ChartGuard clients when we were speccing this out and developing it was that the network was really the most common point of failure, because there's hundreds of miles and thousands of miles of wires, and you can't control what's going on out there. As Tom was showing in his slides, right? There's construction going on, there's storms coming through, all this stuff. So that's an important part of ChartGuard, is the data had to be local. The other part is that access to the data had to be simple. It had to not involve a myriad of technologies to be able to get to that clinical data. So in the ChartGuard solution, what we do each night is we have an engine that runs against your NextGen database, and it looks at your appointment schedule. And from that appointment schedule, it creates a PDF file for each patient that mimics your old paper chart, okay? So you now have this PDF file with the clinical information in it that we'll show you in a little bit. That gives you your information outside of NextGen, outside of the NextGen database. It's kind of like right now we have all your information in NextGen, and that's great. NextGen's a great system, but you kind of have all your eggs in one basket too. By pulling the information out for the upcoming patient visits and putting it in these PDF files, you now have that information somewhere else where if you lose access to that database, you can read it. It's in a PDF, it's human readable. Almost every computing platform out there has a PDF file reader. These are, these files that we're always getting from other people and pulling down over the internet. So it's pretty much ubiquitous that it's in this PDF. Now, what happens when the network's down? Well, one of the things that ChartGuard does on your behalf is it takes these PDF files and it pushes them out over the network to the site where the patient's going to present. So this happens overnight. So at 9 a.m., if there's construction down the street or a storm rolls through and the network lines go down, you already have those PDFs out at the remote site. So looking at this diagram, in the center we have the EHR server. That's where the ChartGuard engine is running. It's going to create those PDF files. It's going to push the appropriate ones out to each of your sites so they have them out there. And it's also going to do more than one day's worth. It's going to look several days ahead in the schedule. So that way, depending on the timing of the outage, you still have the vast majority of the charts for the patients that are coming in on those subsequent days while you're waiting to get back online with NextGen. Whether that's a network failure or a router failure or a terminal server failure or a database, all these different things that can fail, you have the charts already on site at each location. They're PDF files, so you can pull them up if the network's totally down at that location. You can pull them up off that PC. You can print them to a locally attached printer, and just like the old days, put them in a manila envelope, folder, hand them to the providers as they go back, and they have their clinical information. So they're not standing there looking dumbfounded when the patient's kind of in their world. I was just here last week or 2 weeks ago, but in the provider's world, that was, tens or hundreds of appointments ago. Okay, so, we're really helping the practice run smoother. We're helping the providers appear in control of the situation in front of the patient, and we're doing it with this platform where the complexity is on this back end where we generate the PDF files, but the simplicity is on the front end where all you have to do is open a PDF file, your information's there for that patient, and it can be opened on almost any device or printed to paper. Okay, so this slide here, again, it's real simple. They're created and then they're pushed out. So what is in these PDF files? Let's take a look at the next slide. So these PDF files contain really the essential pieces of data that you need to have a patient encounter. So it may not be 10 years worth of history, but it may be the most relevant bits of history that you need. And as part of the installation, we'll work with you on that. Each site will get a appointment listing because, of course, you need to know who's coming in that day and when they're coming in. So each site gets an appointment listing pushed out to them. In addition, each chart has a patient data sheet with demographics, who the provider is, who the primary insurance is, good things like that. So when you're seeing them, you know kind of their relevance. It also has your NextGen module data as listed here. So you can look at, just open allergies, medications, immunizations, and so on. So that information's in there. We can pull information from EHR documents. So if you're generating documents from your, master IM or chart notes, we can pull those into the PDF file that ChartGuard's going to create for you. We can even pull ICS files into there. So if you have images or other things you're scanning that are relevant to seeing the patient in a downtime scenario, that will all be there. So the beauty of this is, for that patient, you have a nice PDF file that contains data elements, image elements, document elements that are all there and easy for the provider to flip through during the visit. So I'm going to turn it back to Tom now, and he's going to take you through what the sample appointment book looks like, that PDF file, and then we'll look at a sample PDF file for a patient chart. And again, each patient gets their own PDF file, so that way you just pull up the one you need or print the one you need, and you have that patient's information. So it's really a great solution for when NextGen is unavailable. And again, all this information gets pushed locally to each site. Tom, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So here's a look at the charts and what they look like. As Joe mentioned, ChartGuard is a piece of software that runs at night in the background, and it generates the charts that are pushed out to each of the locations. And here is an example of what the chart looks like in PDF format. And as Joe mentioned, because it's in PDF format, it can be read on any type of device, whether that is a desktop computer, a laptop computer, a tablet computer, a smartphone, any type of a device. That is generated. And you can simply scroll down, from section to section. So here's allergies and what that looks like. And we can scroll to the next section. And here's the medications and what that looks like. So each page, if you will, is a section that gets pulled from the patient's information. Here's a look at what labs look like. So you can see each one's in a table format. And as Joe mentioned, we'll work with you on determining the amount of information that can be brought forward into these charts. So we can bring forward the amount of information by either length of time, so give me all the information within the past 6 months, or give me the last several instances of this particular environment. Here's chronic conditions. Here's medical and surgical history. So you can scroll from each section, but then we also bookmark each section. So if you go over to the bookmark of the PDF file, you'll get the list of the bookmarks, and then you can simply go to the particular section that interests you and click on that link, and it'll bring you to that location. This is what immunizations looks like. As Joe mentioned, we can pull in documents and images as well. So here's a look at a document. And then ICS images, we can bring those forward and in. And with this, you can say, give me the last 3 images, give me the last 3 documents. I don't need to see the last 6 months worth of information. We also bring in the account summary in the fact that because you may have lost access to NextGen, and so when you're seeing patients, the front desk can also deal with any type of billing situation, collection situation that they need to as well if a person comes in. So let's look at the chart itself and what it looks like. Again, you can scroll through from top to bottom, or you can simply click on the bookmark and go to the section that you want to look at. The other PDF that gets generated is the appointment listing. So as Joe mentioned, when ChartGuard is working and it's creating all of the charts, it also creates the appointment listing for each of the locations so that the front desk knows who's coming in, what they're coming in for, and who they're coming in to see. So you can see this type of information on the appointment listing. So next, those are two examples of the chart, the information that's generated by ChartGuard. As we just talked about, you know, the type of information that's generated. Joe had mentioned that we can look forward 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days forward, looking at the appointment listings. As that information gets generated, we can look at the depth information as well as I talked about, either in the time frame, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, or the number of occurrences, the most recent occurrences. In addition, as each night that ChartGuard runs, it cleans up after itself, if you will, each night, meaning that it deletes the files that are out there and then replenishes the new files that are generated, new appointments that are generated. And the appointment listing itself, we can customize it to some extent to meet the front office needs. This is just a testimony of a client of ours who had purchased ChartGuard about 1.5 years ago. And 6 months after they had purchased it in December, they had a WAN outage that took down access to their 2 largest clinics. And because they had ChartGuard installed, they didn't have to close any of the clinics, and they didn't have to turn away patients. They were able to keep the clinics open and functioning while they brought able to get NextGen back online, and their providers were quite pleased with the ChartGuard solution. So the client had took a couple minutes and sent us an email to let us know. There's just a couple versions of ChartGuard that we have out there. As I mentioned, we just talked about ChartGuard. We have ChartGuard on demand, which allows you to create charts on request. So for people who have patient requests or audit requests that come in, you can generate charts specifically for a particular patient or a group of patients. And then ChartGuard Archiver is a solution that allows for long-term storage of charts. So a little bit about attentive. We were founded in 2003, and our mission is to create additional value for your NextGen investment. We know that when you purchased NextGen, it was a major purchase, and you've had upgrades probably of NextGen over the years, and probably had to add additional hardware as well. So that investment has grown over the years, and we look to work with you to get as much value out of that investment as possible. Our passion is to work with our clients to improve patient care, to work with our clients to enhance the patient experience, and to work with our clients to maintain a financially healthy practice. We have 19 plus years of experience with NextGen, and we have 70-some employees in the company, most of which are consultants that travel from practice to practice, health center to health center, working with the individual organizations to get as much value out of that investment as possible. If you take the 2003 to 19 years, they do not add up, and the reason for that is attentive started out as the IT department for a medical organization, And back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when that business mantra back then was to focus on what you do best and outsource the rest, the medical organization was going to outsource the IT group. And the leaders of the IT group said, well, if you want to do that, what we'd like to do is form our own company and provide services back to you. So they agreed to do that. And from that point forward, we've worked with over 350 to 400 clients that use NextGen. And during this time frame, we have become
Well, it sounds like Tom's audio cut out a little bit there, but
through those five.
Oh, there you go. You're back, Tom. Sorry about that. Keep
There
going.
we are. Okay. Through these 5 service lines, we provide any one of these solutions as a point solution or together in a combination solution. So we can do implementations, we can do process improvements, as I mentioned earlier, looking at improving the workflows, the business processes within the organization. We can do enhancements to the templates of NextGen. We have a group of developers that can do that. We can provide upgrades, and we can provide help desk support as well. We have a group of technology folks that can provide IT managed services to the organization where we can manage your infrastructure. We also have our own data center. We can provide hosting solutions. So we host clients in our own data center. And then we have productivity tools, a group of developers that develop productivity tools. And ChartGuard is one of those tools that we just talked about. We also have a refund manager tool that streamlines and automates the credit balance handling and refund check processing within the organization. We developed an interface for Phreesia to be able to update the clinical information in NextGen from the Phreesia tablet. And then we have created a interface to TransWorld to seamlessly pass information from NextGen to TransWorld in order to eliminate the cost of, or to lower the cost of collections, I should say. So just a few of our productivity tools. With that, now we'll take any questions. As Chelsea had mentioned earlier, if you enter them into the question box, the chat box, and then we can answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Joe. Again, Joe is our subject matter expert here, so if you have some in-depth questions, don't hesitate to ask. And we're just going to go through these in the order that we received. We don't have that many, so if you do have them, shoot them out, and we'll be sure to answer them. First question. Our practice has a lot of transient patients who requests a copy of their medical record when they leave. Can this help with that?
I'll go ahead and jump on that one. This is Joe. That's actually a great use of the ChartGuard On Demand product. So the ChartGuard On Demand has an interface where you can select a patient or a population of patients and produce those PDF files on demand as needed. The ChartGuard that we were talking about right now, which is kind of the classic version of ChartGuard, is really intended as a continuity solution. We do have some clients who use it for kind of a pseudo on demand, almost the next day, where they schedule an appointment for the patient and allocate it against a fake resource. And that's one way you could do that using the existing ChartGuard. But that is primarily the reason why we created the ChartGuard On Demand version of ChartGuard, is to be able to do those things almost immediately.
Great. Thank you, Joe. There have been a lot of natural disasters in our area, i.e. the fires. Is this something that could help with that? I'm presuming not actually the fires, but with their with their records.
Right. No, definitely, because one of the things we see in natural disasters is the first things that go down are the network lines. So it's everything you think about, right? Those telephone lines, those network lines, those things go down. You may still have power, but you can no longer get to your data center where NextGen is. So ChartGuard is perfect for those scenarios. We have clients that live in Tornado Alley. We have clients that are in high hurricane zones, especially down there around the Gulf of Mexico. So This is the reason ChartGuard is architected the way it is. So you have the data locally, and when something comes through, so long as you can get the doors open and get the power up to have patients in the clinic, you have that clinical information there.
Great, thank you, Joe. Can you confirm that this would work with large groups who have over 100 providers?
Yes, it absolutely does. It works with small groups and with large groups. We've built in some capabilities in ChartGuard to be able to scale it up for very large clinics that have several hundred providers and hundreds of locations. We can run multiple ChartGuard engines, and they'll load balance and create those charts overnight. So that gives it more capacity to create more charts in the same amount of time as, say, a smaller clinic would.
Great, and it looks like this may be our last question. Is ChartGuard in the cloud?
ChartGuard is where you need it to be. So what I mean by that is if your NextGen's hosted in the cloud, we can put the ChartGuard engine in the cloud where your NextGen is. But the whole advantage to ChartGuard is those PDF files with the patient information get pushed locally. All right, so the clinical information you want to access is not in the cloud. It gets put on a designated computer at each location. So again, a big advantage of ChartGuard is that the information's already there when you need it. It's not up in the cloud where if there's a network outage, you can no longer get to it.
Okay, well, thank you, Joe. And it looks like that's all the questions. But if you think of any questions after this is over, both Tom and Joe's information is up on the screen. Feel free to reach out to them after the fact. We're happy to answer any questions on this. And I'll be sending out an email within the next week with a link to the recording in case you want to watch it or share it with anyone else. You can also reply to that email, and I'll make sure that your questions get answered. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us today. I hope that you found this helpful, and we hope to hear from you. And have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.